didn't hear it before, I just mentioned that this is Mackenzie. So Mackenzie is one of 5 platypus that we have here at the zoo. He's also our oldest platypus at 25. As far as how old can a platypus live, we don't really know. They're really poorly researched animals. They've been in zoos more than 100 years and we still barely know enough about them. So we have found animals in the wild up to 24 years old, and that's an animal that was tagged 24 years prior and showed up on a survey back in January 2025. In zoos, the oldest one right now, she's 32, which is Central Victoria. So we've got quite a small group of platypus in zoos. There's about 27 platypus in zoos worldwide. So it makes it a really small sample group to do any research with. It's also really concerning because there's no insurance population. So if something went seriously wrong out there in the wild, we don't have a recovery plan for these guys. But that's why we're doing so much research right now. So Mackenzie, given his age, he has been involved with the breeding program in the past, but he's now been retired from the breeding program. In our research area, which is tucked in the right-hand side of this building, we've got 4 other animals, 2 boys, 2 girls, and they're all much younger individuals. So we've used some of Mackenzie's genetic information to help us build a tool which can tell us how old a platypus is. So it's an epigenetic clock. So we've sent samples from all the platypus and echidnas we have to the US to create this mammalian clock that we can use genetic blood samples to age platypus effectively. So we now know that the 4 that we have are all at good breeding age, so fingers crossed. We were only being preferred to breed platypus. So since 1943, there's only been 11 successful events of breeding platypus in zoos. The first one, as I said, 1943, but wasn't repeated again until 1998 when Mackenzie's older brother was born, and then in 2000 we had Mackenzie. Taronga in Sydney bred platypus in 2003, 4 and 5, and then our luck ran out there. So most of the work's been done at Hillsville Sanctuary, but we would like to add into that into the future. But this building's only 2 years old, so we're still finding our feet, getting the program established. Now, he is very busy, which I'll play this afternoon. He was born in a zoo. He has picked up what we call a stereotypical behaviour, so that constant right hand spinning is one of his quirks. It's also a quirk of his brother, so we don't know if it's genetic or purely behavioural. We do try to break up that behaviour throughout the day, so he gets about 6 different feeds with hide food in his environment. The plate that's hung from the ceiling has filled up with mealworms before. It's slowly going to rain mealworms out over the rest of the afternoon to encourage natural foraging. When a platypus dives beneath the water, they do look quite clumsy because they actually navigate with their eyes shut. So every time a platypus dives, they shut their eyes, shut their ears, and shut their nose. And they rely on their highly sensitive bill. Now that bill, it looks quite solid, but it's actually really soft. Someone described it as balloony the other day. It's a bit of a bizarre sensation to it. It's got this really rubbery texture, but it's loaded with nerve endings. So there's about 100,000 nerve receptors in that bill. 40,000 of those are electroreceptors. So you can feel electronic currents in the water. So all the food that we offer to our platypus is all live food, including yabbies, mealworms, maggots, fly pupae, glass shrimp, earthworms. They get quite a variety of aquatic invertebrates. You can see a yabby hanging out the end of the log just down there. He doesn't know that he's on the menu. But these guys, as they're moving around underwater with their eyes shut, they're feeling for where those electronic signals are strongest, help hone in on where that food is, and in the shape of their bill, they use it to sweep and disturb silts and other sediment on the bottom, and as they're doing that, disturb those invertebrates, bring them inside of their mouth, and they've got pockets inside their mouth there under their eyes. We call them cheek pouches, like a chipmunk, and that's where they store all that food until they rise to the surface and then they start to chew it. Adult platypus don't have teeth. They lose their teeth at 12 months of age, and they're left with grinding plates made out of keratin, same stuff as your fingernails and as your hair. And that's why they use it, similar to a mortar and pestle, to grind up their food into a slurry, and that's what they then swallow. They do have a stomach. There is a bit of a miscommunication there that some people have said platypus don't have stomachs. It's not a very well formed stomach. It's not truly a sac, and it hasn't got all the digestive enzymes that would expect to find in other mammals, but they do have a stomach. He's very, very busy this afternoon. I often get asked about his swimming. Those front feet are the powerhouse, they do all the work. The back feet are lazy, they just work as rudders. So it's not an uncommon thing to see a platypus paddling like this one thing. webbing on their front feet is much bigger than their hind feet. What else? That pink pigmentation on his bill is just a him thing. We think it's age-related, a process called depigmentation. His older brother has got a similar thing. It's just telling us that he needs a little bit more tender love and care as he's in his senior years. So he gets all the best spots. So when he goes to bed down those tunnels, he's got air conditioning and lovely plush towels down there. The water is maintained at 14 degrees during the winter and gets kept at below 20 degrees during the summer, so he's got a lovely climate all year round, and that space in there is air conditioned as well.
What's their ideal climate?
They have a huge range, so they inhabit from northern Queensland right down to Tasmania.
Oh.
They live in some quite warm waters up in Queensland, and Queensland platypus are smaller. If you go down to Tassie, they can be up to 3 kilos and double the size of Mackenzie. They're quite big animals down there, and they live in water temperatures below freezing point. So they're quite a diverse. So I can't really tell you what their ideal is. I can tell you that their metabolic neutral temperature is 18 degrees. So they're not working very hard to keep themselves warm at 18 degrees, but as it starts to drop below that point, they definitely start to eat a lot more to maintain that body temperature, which is quite cold compared to other mammals. We're 37 degrees at core temperature. These guys are roughly 32 degrees. So they are bizarre. They are, the world's weirdest animal. There's so many things we don't fully understand about them, and the more research we're doing, the weirder that they're becoming. Now, as I said, that we don't fully know every detail about their reproduction, and that's why we're doing so much research, is to build an insurance population in zoos. But what we do know is they don't lay their eggs on land, they need to put them somewhere safe underground. So you can see Mackenzie's got his burrow there on the back wall. A female will dig a special breeding burrow at the later part of the end of winter, going into early spring. But first, she's got to find a boyfriend. Now, Mackenzie is in here by himself. Males live a fairly solitary life. But the girls, if I were to put a girl in there today, she would flee. It's too early in the year. She would basically disappear underground. Every time that he got up to start his day, she would go to bed. And then when he went to bed, she would start her day. They actually time-share the river to avoid each other. So even if I offered a girlfriend right now, she wouldn't have a bar of him. That again changes in the lead up to that breeding season. So late winter is when we see the male's testosterone spike. It's when they're producing the most venom. So they're Australia's only venomous mammal, and it's only the boys that have the venom. So on their hind legs, they've got these 1.2 centimetre long spurs on each hind leg connected to a venom gland in their thigh muscle. The venom isn't lethal. It's used as a defence against other males. It's very much about a territorial conquest of the space that they're living in. A male can claim between 800 metres to a kilometre of river. In that space, there might be 7 or 8 females hanging out, and he's trying to claim all those females as his, whether they are interested in him or not. But there's always this turf war going on with boys on either end of that stretch of river, and they're trying to encroach on each other's territory. Now, when they do bump into that rival male, it's starting to a wrestling match, and they're trying to stab each other with these spurs on their hind legs. The winner is the one that can get his spurs in first, inject that venom, and then it starts to cause pain and swelling in the other individual. It should immobilise them for about an hour and a half, which is just the amount of time it needs to flush that male downstream as he can't keep up with the current anymore. You don't have to worry about taking out the trash. In other animals, again, it's not considered lethal. There is one account of a small dog being killed by a platypus, but we think that was more shock than it was anything else. For those people unlucky enough to be spurred by a platypus, humans don't do very well with the venom. It causes excruciating pain that lasts for about a month and a half.
Ooh.
So we do encourage people, if you find a sick or injured platypus, to get in contact with wires. They will either try to get someone out there to help you, or they'll give you some very clear and detailed instruction on how to handle that animal safely. But those spurs, once they're embedded in your wrist, the platypus doesn't let go. You've got to pry the platypus off your arm. The spurs are quite long, quite a wide gauge, there's a fair bit of blood, and that pain sets in within about 10 minutes, and your arm will swell up into a big sausage. You'll find yourself in hospital, begging for morphine, another pain relief. They'll end up putting a nerve block in your arm, cutting off all sensation. Keep you there for about 6 days under observation, discharge you, and wish you good luck for that next month and a half. So there's something about their venom structure which our body struggles to break down certain proteins and peptides. I don't know what he's doing in that branch there. Kicking it around there. Might just come out the outside.
Is that personal experience?
It's not myself personally, but a colleague of mine.
Okay.
And she never wanted to touch a platypus ever again after that event.
Oh, he's going
Oh.
If he does go to bed, we do have the cameras, but we'll see what he gets up to. Now, there's one really interesting in their venom. It's a peptide called TLG-1. It's a peptide like glucagon. That doesn't mean very much when I say it like that, but they found a similar peptide in a creature called the Gila monster back in 2005. And from this peptide, they were able to synthetically create a drug. Now, this peptide, it stimulates production of insulin when we eat food. So this variant they found in the Gila monster, they turned it into a drug called Ozempic to help combat diabetes. They're currently looking at the platypus version of that peptide to be the next generation of diabetes treatment. So that's in clinical trials in mice as we speak. But that's a synthetically produced venom because we don't have enough platypus in zoos to milk and produce venom for that kind of treatment. Anyway, all this territorial conquest goes on. Eventually the females start getting interested. She'll sit beside the river on a rock or a log and she'll start to groom herself when she knows the boy's around. And what she's letting out is pheromones into the water, things that he can taste. He swims over to introduce herself by biting firmly onto the end of her tail, and he's not going to let go. Now, girls are typically a bit smaller than boys. They weigh between 800 grams and kilos. Boys are a bit over a kilo, up to 2 kilos in New South Wales. Mackenzie here, who's doing some very tight circles at the moment, is 1.3 kilos, so he's quite a small boy. The other two boys I have in the building are both over 2 kilos in weight. Now, once he grabs onto the end of her tail, she jumps in and starts leading him on an underwater obstacle course. She'll find all the gaps that she fits through quite neatly between rocks and logs. He gets dragged through this obstacle course and beaten up and bashed around. He manages to hold on to her tail the entire time. He's proven himself a nice, strong boy. Good genetics. The next part of the test is the dance routine. They're now both holding on to each other's tails and each other's mouth, and they're swimming around in this pirouette, kind of like he's doing small circles at the moment. And this can go on for an hour. Endurance test. There was a documentary on the ABC a few years ago called The Platypus Guardian, and they described it as the platypus love donor. It's a pretty accurate description. Finally, copulation occurs, and then he swims off to find another girlfriend in his territory. I'm afraid romance in platypus is dead. She's now got a lot of work to do. She's got to excavate this breeding burrow. So, as I said, they're egg layers, they're a monotreme. There's only 5 species of monotreme on our planet, 1 species of platypus and 4 species of echidna. We're all familiar with the short-beaked echidna. You can find them absolutely everywhere in Australia. There's actually 3 other echidnas, all found in Indonesia and New Guinea. They're the long-beaked echidnas. They are 12 kilos, they look like a kiwi on 4 legs. Big dark fur, short quills, very long snout. They exist in these rainforests looking for earthlings. They're very rarely seen, but they are truly unique. Jumping back to platypus though, their egg that they lay is tiny. So it's about the size of a 10-cent piece, and they have to lay it somewhere very special, and that's why they excavate this breeding burrow. She creates a nice microclimate within that space. So she'll collect leaf litter, bark and grasses from the water. She uses her tail like an extra hand, so it curls around underneath herself and holds on to all that nesting material as she's collecting it. She climbs up the bank and takes it deep underground and builds, we would describe it similar to a possum dray, this weaved basket of nesting material, and within that she lays her eggs. Now, platypus typically lay 2 eggs. In some rare cases they'll lay 3, but 2 is the most common number for platypus. These eggs, as I said, tiny, they've got a soft leathery skin, they're more like a reptile egg than they are like a bird egg. She'll wrap herself around them, keeping them nice and warm for about 10 days, 10 to 12 days of incubation before they hatch. To hatch from the egg, they have a little sharp edge on their bill. We describe it like a milk tooth, but it's similar to what crocodiles have to break out of their eggs. It falls off very quickly, and I'm sure Mum is glad that it does, because now they need milk. Platypus, they don't have nipples. They've been on our planet for about 80 million years, but they've yet to evolve nipples. So when Mum lies on her back, she's got mammary glands on the surface of her skin, and she oozes milk through her skin. So they just sweat milk out, and the pug will lap this milk up off their chest. The next 130 days, she'll go in and out of the burrow, lie on her back, sweat out some milk, feed her puddles. They go from the size of about 10 grams up to about 700 grams over that 130-day period. So it's some high octane milk, and there's some antibodies in there which we're actually unfamiliar with. And CSIRO is currently studying those to see if we can combat superbugs in hospitals with a new type of antibody. So these guys have got a lot to teach us. Mum eventually gets sick of feeding these juveniles, these little puggles, and kitchen then closes at 133 days. Now that should be the hint for the young to leave the burrow and start their own life. If they don't get that hint, we have seen examples where mum actually starts collapsing the burrow over the top of the puggles. So parents take note, if you want to get your kids out, there we go.
Demolish the house.
So yes, juveniles leave the burrow. From that point, if you're a little girl platypus, you're in luck, you get to hang out in mum's territory for the next 18 months or so before you might move on and find your own patch. If you're a little boy platypus, you're not so lucky. The next boy you bump into is your dad, and he's going to tell you to get lost with a pair of spurs. So you're not very welcome, and you then move on very quickly to find your own territory further upstream. Again, there's only been 11 events in zoo histories that were bred platypus. We're doing a lot of research into that right now. So Mackenzie's a great ambassador. He's actively participating in a lot of research we're doing with our partners at the University of New South Wales right now. The 4 animals in our research area, they're under constant CCTV observation. We're trying to better understand platypus behaviour in courtship. And then the most important part of this program is our refuge. Platypus are doing it tough out there. We know their distribution has shrunk by 40% over the last 100 years or so, and we're really worried in the next severe drought we could lose a lot more. We know in the last drought we were being approached almost daily about whether we could have platypus in need. We simply ran out of room. We didn't have dedicated facilities for platypus. As you head from this space, walk through the refuge viewing area there, you'll see row after row after row of tubs. We can house 60 platypus here in the next severe drought. So it does technically mean we're the world's largest platypus facility. It doesn't really mean much internationally, but we're very proud to have it here. What I want to say is thank you for visiting the zoo. We're a non-profit organisation. We wouldn't be able to do any of this work for platypus or many other species you've seen or heard around the zoo today without your support. So you can feel a little bit better as you leave here this afternoon about the future of many of our Australian wildlife species and international species as well. If you've got any questions about Mackenzie or platypus, I'll be here for a little bit, but I'll leave you on one fun fact this afternoon. And that's platypus and echidnas are technically the only animals on our planet that could make their own custard. Because they produce both eggs and milk. You might need to do vanilla essence, so we're a bit assured. Guys, have a great afternoon here at Taronga.